With the 2018 midterms almost behind us, all eyes are now on who will run for president in 2020. The list of potential Democratic challengers to President Trump is growing. It ranges from lawmakers to mega donors and celebrities, but only a small number of hopefuls have officially jumped in the race so far. Others have indicated they will make a decision in the near future. So what can we expect from a seemingly crowded field? CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns has a new article breaking it all down. It's called "One of These Candidates Could Be the Next President." And Caitlin joins me again. I love that. One of these candidates, it's almost like where in the world is Waldo? There's so many of them.
Exactly. So many. That graphic really illustrates how crowded this field will be.
It really is. And is that an advantage or a disadvantage to Democrats?
Well, you know what? There are so many of them wanting to kind of take this opportunity to run against Donald Trump. And it's really similar to a dynamic that we saw in 2016. Remember, we had 17 Republican candidates, and they were all really itching to take on Hillary Clinton. So similar dynamic. I know we're just a week away from the results of the midterm, but it's really not too early to be talking about 2020 because these candidates or potential candidates have actually been out in places like Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. They've been crisscrossing the country in 2018, campaigning for candidates, raising money, and building networks. So if they're thinking about it and talking about it, we can too.
They're taking the temperature for sure. So let's break it down into categories. Yes. Let's start with those potential candidates who are right now serving in Congress, especially some of those who are in the Senate. Who might those be?
It's really going to be a primary in and of itself when you think of members of the Senate. You have people like Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, even people like Amy Klobuchar. You're seeing a lot of these senators not only building these networks that I've been talking about, but also using their perches on various committees to kind of leverage power and also to kind of make names for themselves. Use that as a platform. We saw that a lot during the Judiciary Committee hearings for Brett Kavanaugh, for example. That's when they feel like they can kind of carve out their own identities in the Senate. So that in itself will be a really interesting kind of primary within the primary.
There were definitely a few star-making turns during the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings. Now let's talk about those Democratic candidates who ran during the midterms, may or may not have won their respective races, but kind of made a national name for themselves. I'm thinking specifically of Beto O'Rourke, but there were several.
Exactly. I mean, losing can kind of be the new winning if we think about it that way. Beto O'Rourke, of course, only came within 3 points or so of winning that Texas seat, but in the running, raised nearly $40 million for a Senate campaign, garnered so much national attention, garnered, endorsements from people like Beyonce, which, could help with he has high name recognition. And Democrats really don't have a specific front runner in terms of who they really want to see. So it's kind of anyone's guess at this point, and he certainly has an advantage. And there are a lot of Democrats who are itching for him to run.
He's charismatic for sure, and a lot of people said, look, he almost won Texas running as an openly liberal candidate, no bones about it. He wasn't a moderate or a centrist as he ran and got so close, which, some people say, well, he was defeated, but other people say, but look how well he did. So.
And it kind of raises the question, and this is something that Democrats are going to be trying to figure out throughout this two-year primary process coming up, is do they want, a candidate they feel really passionate about and excited about? Do they want more of a pragmatic, kind of a more moderate candidate? These are some of the themes that they are trying to figure out at this point. And if you're looking for that passion, someone like Beto might fulfill that.
Who doesn't have a lot of experience, though, but neither did Donald Trump when he came up. So we got to keep that in mind. Now, what about governors? I mean, traditionally, they've had a leg up in the race for president. Are there any governors on the horizon?
Yeah, we have a few governors on this list. A couple of them who are leaving office, like Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper is term limited. He served 2 terms. It comes from a purple state, of course. It's critical to winning the presidency eventually. He's a business owner and has actually, pushed through a lot of reforms on gun control, even though he faced some backlash in his state for it. He could be someone to look at as an example.
So we know that, of course, as we just said, President Trump kind of came out of the blue and became president. Are there any other sort of Democratic candidates who don't perhaps have the traditional Democratic background who could still be frontrunners?
Yeah, we have a few. We have some that we call interlopers, people like Michael Avenatti, for example, or even even a Howard Schultz, who is the former CEO of Starbucks. And we also have, people that we've put into this kind of billionaires club, people like Michael Bloomberg, of course, or Tom Steyer, who have been spending a lot of their own money on these midterm races, trying to exert some influence on issues that they care about. So, this will be a test of whether Democrats want someone with a policy experience,
right,
whether they want someone who ignites passion, or whether they want someone who's kind of outside of this whole thing. And another thing they're going to have to consider is whether they want someone who can play Donald Trump's game or go another direction.
Well, I was going to say, because this is a very diverse field that we've just sort of outlined here, but one commonality they all share is they're all going to go up against Donald Trump. So how much of that is a factor in who ultimately gets picked?
That's going to be a huge factor here. And, people like Michael Avenatti, the lawyer for Stormy Daniels, he's been arguing that he's the only one that can kind of take on Trump the way that Trump takes on his opponents. And he's already had a super PAC. He's been traveling to some early states. He's irked a lot of Democrats, especially during the Kavanaugh hearings. But there is an argument to be made that, the rule book is out. The question I have, though, is whether kind of the factors surrounding Donald Trump and the way in which he was able to avoid controversies, or rather that controversies didn't really stick to him, whether that will really be applied to some of these other candidates. We haven't really seen that work out. He's kind of his own force in politics, and it's difficult for others to replicate that, particularly Democrats.
Now, there is one sort of Democratic candidate that's kind of the elephant in the room, right? A former aide of Hillary Clinton recently penned an op-ed saying that she is likely to run again. Number one, is that something that Democrats want? And number two, could she beat him second time? I mean, could she take the lessons from the first round and actually become a candidate that could beat Donald Trump?
There's really little appetite for Hillary Clinton in the party, especially given the fact that there are so many other Democrats interested in running. And it should be noted that the person who wrote this op-ed was an advisor to her her first presidential campaign, and is not in her inner circle, and in fact, has been shunned by a lot of Democrats. So I would take that with a grain of salt. I think we're looking at this kind of group that we've identified. There could be more, there could be less, but we'll see as it goes on. What we know so far is that there's a lot of interest on the Democratic side.
It'll be exciting to see who emerges.
Yes.
Caitlin Huey-Burns,
following it all.
thank you so much for that.
Thanks.